Hello, guys. Welcome to Our Story Matters. Cascade is more complete with you here, your voice, your story, your experience. And we want to cultivate safety, curiosity, and connectedness through these interviews we have been running. And today, I'm very excited to get to talk to Connie. Connie and I are actually the ones who, going forward, are interviewing other people in our community. But we thought to start off with each other. So
we're the guinea pigs.
I know, exactly. For us also to give it a try and to see how it goes. So, Connie, I'm excited because actually we didn't really know each other that well before we started this little project here.
That's been part of the fun, yes.
That's kind of all the why I said yes. But I'm excited that today I'm getting to know a little bit more of your story. So,
Sure.
Would you like to introduce yourself to us a little bit more? Like, where are you from? Where were you born, raised, all these things?
All the things, absolutely. Well, my name's Connie Baker, and I was born in Southern Oregon in the city of Medford. It's a town of Medford, but I was brought home from the hospital to a tiny, tiny town out in the country called Ruch, R-U-C-H, Oregon. And I was the oldest of two kids, and I have a younger brother, 5 years old, 5 years younger than me, who was adopted. And I grew up in the country. I commuted in junior high and high school into Medford, 15 miles away, bused in there. But I was a tomboy, grew up running around in the countryside and in the hills, and I loved it. I did. I loved it. It was a place that rednecks and hippies lived back in the 60s and 70s.
Nice.
Now it's the place all the doctors and lawyers and successful business people live, and because it's pristine, it's beautiful. And so, but back then it was just country, so.
Does your family still live there?
My family moved away 26 years ago, actually, this Labor Day. So coming up 26 years ago. So they moved. I had moved back. So we kind of swapped places. I grew up down there. Then I moved to Portland.
Okay.
And until I was 26. And then I moved home back to Southern Oregon. And then when I was, do the math, mid-30s, mid-30s, I moved back to Portland. We've been here almost 20 years. So 20 years next June. So so I've kind of flopped back and forth. Southern Oregon, Portland, Southern Oregon, Portland.
Okay,
so,
but you stay true to Oregon.
Yes, staying right here. I've never lived outside here.
Nice.
Been in, I don't remember last count, 32 or 3 different countries, but never lived outside of Oregon. So
a lot of countries too. That's something special about you.
Quite a few different things. Yes. Part of one of our questions is there something different, or what was our word for it? Different or
unusual about you.
Unusual. There's the word.
Unique
about me. Well, part of it is I have been to quite a few countries overseas. But the other thing about my country upbringing is a point of pride. I learned to not ride, but drive my dad's Honda 90 old ancient motorcycle when I was 8 years old. Wow. So it was so big that I had to hold the handlebars, put it into gear, and then jump on and do.
And he was sitting behind you, or you were alone?
I was alone.
Oh, I was alone. Wow.
Oh yeah, I was alone. I was
only in the country.
Exactly. I was about by 10 or 11. I was tearing through the hills on that thing. I had so much fun. So yes, that's my country girl part of my personality. I am currently a therapist here in Portland, Oregon. I deal with mental health and specifically trauma recovery. A lot of other things, depression, anxiety. The normal stuff that many of us deal with. My family right now, my hubby and I are empty nesters. I married a wonderful, delightful man 28 years ago, and I got 2 kids with the package who are now mid-30s, and our oldest turns 40 this fall. And so I got 2 wonderful, truly delightful humans with the package of my husband.
Good.
And then we also have our biological daughter between us, who's 25. So all of them are out, and we are empty nesters. And I was really, really sad when our last one left for about 5 days.
Wow.
And then I was, yes. Actually, I cried her whole senior year. I mean, empty nesting was a thing, but boy, once she was gone, I'm like, I'm loving this. So it's been, yeah, that's kind of where our family is right now. So
Good. Thank you for sharing.
yes, it's just kind of a, yeah, that's kind of a big picture.
Yeah, and I love it because I think, again, like I said, I would have not, if someone would have guessed, like, or asked me to guess where you're from, I didn't know that you were in Oregon, like from Oregon, grew up here, stayed here.
Well,
so that's
pure
awesome.
Oregonian. Who knows whether it'll ever
And they're
change,
so
but
unique because I meet as a foreigner, moving here, there's not so many true Oregonians I really meet, like, because
right.
that's kind of the fun of Portland, that there are so many people that moved and joined us.
Correct.
Or us, I joined.
Right.
Anyway.
Well, and from Southern Oregon, we're like, y'all go away, but
Yeah.
in the metro area, it is much more accepted and welcomed.
And talk about cross-culturalness, because I mean, I cross countries and continents, but there is already such a different culture in the moment you go, most likely to Medford.
Oh, so different. So different. Yeah.
You.
And there's ups and downsides to both of them. Honestly, there's parts, clearly we've lived here 19 plus years. So there's something to keep us here in an urban area. And that said, there's some really beautiful, we love to go back to Southern Oregon and visit, and we even go, do we want to move back? And, we toy with it because there's some really sweet stuff about that area. It's beautiful. It's delightful. And there's some annoying stuff down there too, just like there's annoying stuff here. So yeah, there's definitely a culture contrast. So.
Okay, Connie, let's jump in. We would love to hear what part of your story would you like to share with us today? What is the part that you thought, when you were asked to kind of share, what is the thing that stood out to you? And let's hear.
Well, as you know, at 55 years old, I got quite a few stories, but I've been sorting this through. I think I'd really like to talk about what happened with some of my faith shifts and what the internal and external events were surrounding those. I was a golden child in evangelicalism growing up. I went to Bible school and I was heading good directions. I was a poster child and doing what I was supposed to do as a single woman and going to the mission field. And many of you already know the story of me going through spiritual abuse. I was sexually abused by a pastor. And then the church leadership blamed me and exited me from the church. And it was a very public, gave public confession. And it really destroyed me for about a good decade. That was at 25 years old. So, So it was a really brutal healing process. So that story, most of you already know. And it just took a lot of years of recovery. So by the time, 11 years after this, we moved back here to Portland. I left the Portland area when the abuse happened, met my husband, married, had the kiddos, we moved back. And things started unraveling for me spiritually. There was a sense of, the ground was shaking after the abuse. I could feel some crumbling, so to speak, saying, I don't know whether I'm all in this evangelical thing. And honestly, probably by about 30 years old, I would say I have 1 foot in and 1 foot out. And I just stayed there. I wasn't comfortable.
But were you attending church at that point?
I was still attending. In fact, I was a pastor's wife through part of this.
Okay.
So
that was a hard place.
It was a hard place. And I was a pastor's wife through several years of the crumbling. Even though I kept saying, no, I think I'm fine, I could feel the crumbling. And even though I said I had 1 foot in and 1 foot out, which I did, I didn't know how long I could straddle it. And then I did probably one of the things that is going to cause a fork in the road for anybody. I went to seminary. I got my counseling degree in a seminary. a conservative seminary.
And you specifically wanted it to do it in a Christian context, even though your
I
faith was so like
That's
unraveling?
such a great question, Hanna. Yes,
Okay.
I did. The foot in, frankly, it was a bit pragmatic.
Okay.
I knew that becoming a therapist, my initial clientele were going to be
Okay.
largely people I knew.
Mm-hmm.
And if I had a reputation of a conservative Bible degree, I was going to be more trusted in a
Okay.
lot of those circles. Even though I was putting a foot out, a lot of my people still were all in.
Okay.
And so it was a strategic move. And I did want to wrestle with what does mental health and spiritual life,
Yes.
how do those combine? And I knew this program did a great job of that, and they did. The program, I loved my program. The seminary was very, very wrenching for me spiritually. It polarized me is what it did. I was asked in seminary to write doctrinal statements about things that I thought were utterly irrelevant.
Mm-hmm.
Some things I thought were extremely relevant, but the same doctrinal statement that says, I believe one thing, and then down below, I believe this, when not completely joking, I would say, God doesn't even care about this, because it felt so utterly vacuous and empty and meaningless to me. Why are we even talking about some of these things? And I appreciate I have a Bible undergrad too. So this is 2 theological degrees. In my undergrad years, I was like, oh, ooh, I want to write this down. Okay, what does the Bible say about this? What does church history say about this? And I had a lot of fun with it. I was in a very different place. Seminary, I said, this is ripping me in two.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what I believe. And so basically in seminary, I came to a point of saying, I don't know anything except I think I can say I believe there's a God.
Okay.
And I'm pretty sure that Jesus is really important.
Mm-hmm.
And that was not acceptable for doctrinal statements in seminary. And it was really wrenching. But because I was constantly being pushed in all these ways that felt so meaningless, it felt like it just polarized me to the other end of the thing of saying, and really a huge question for many of us is, what is the Bible?
Right.
What is the Bible?
Mm-hmm.
What is the role? I mean, I was raised in, a probably almost fundamentalist brand of evangelicalism, and the Bible is everything. And really, honestly, not to be offensive, but the Bible is God so often in that mindset. And so I was reevaluating, what is this thing that we have that's considered divine revelation?
Mm-hmm.
And it was really, really unsettling. And I remember talking to one of the department heads several times in tears, going, I am dying. I could feel a withering spiritually. It was not fun. So it was devastating. And I want to say too, it was terrifying, because I could feel my 2 feet, 1 foot in, 1 foot out. I could feel it pulling away. And part of what was really, shocking to me was the fact that I didn't feel like I was doing it. I felt like this was being done to me. I felt like I couldn't help it. And boy, from the tradition I was raised in, you don't say that. You make choices, dang it. And they wouldn't even said, dang it. You make choices to follow God. You make choices to believe the truth, i.e. fundamentalist thought. You make choices to do these things. And I'm saying it's killing me. It is tearing me in two to try to ascribe to that old pattern, that old grid. I can't do it. And to this day, I don't know whether I can find words to describe. People go, what do you mean? It felt like it was killing you spiritually. Well, part of it is I couldn't pray. uh, I couldn't connect with God.
Yeah.
And I had a pretty long history of being able to connect with God. Now, post-abuse, that got severed for a solid 3 years, and then very slowly started coming back. Oh, maybe God and I can be on terms again. But that was a slow reweaving of who God and I were again. But then this kind of ruptured it again, and in seminary, and I'm like, I have no connection with God. It's killing me.
Wow.
So yeah, it was a really interesting time. And I graduated in 2007. So I would have been 43, I think. I can't do the math. Somewhere in the early 40s. And I just kind of coasted for a while. We were going to a church that had a little breathing room. So I just kept saying, okay. And during some of this transition, I would involve myself in church. My daughter was young, and I would take over huge kids productions, theater and music productions. So I didn't have to sit through a service, and I still looked like I was going to church because I was starting to not be able to sit through a church service.
Were you still a pastor's wife at that point?
No, when we moved to Portland, I wasn't. Okay. So yeah, I had a little more flexibility then.
Yeah.
So I would immerse myself there as in a way to still look socially acceptable to the people who would be concerned about me not going to church, but I couldn't do it. So then I stepped back from that, and some of the crises started really escalating for me to sit through a church. So in 2009, I had a dream, because it was a very life-changing and powerful dream. And in this dream, I was in Southern Oregon, so it was very symbolic of my roots. And in between Medford, where I'd lived my adult life raising my kids, and where I'd grown up in Roost, there's a little town called Jacksonville, Oregon. If you haven't been there, it is the most adorable tourist town. It is an Old West. Anyway, it was a gold mining town, and they preserved a lot of the old buildings. And in my dream, there's a main street with all the old brick, Old West buildings that are there, and you can see them to this day. And I turned a corner, and I looked down the street, and in my dream, the whole left side of the street was flattened. It was like somebody had come through there with construction and just torn it all down and then kind of flattened it over with some dirt. And I looked at, now on the right-hand side, the old structures, the old gorgeous buildings remained.
Okay.
And I turned the corner, and in the dream, I remember grabbing my stomach and doubling over and sobbing, because half of this town had been destroyed and it was irreplaceable. You can't rebuild an old town like that. And in my dream, there was an awareness that they're going to build new apartment buildings here.
Okay.
And I was just horrified. The grief was overwhelming to me. And so in my dream, I just bent over and sobbed, and I woke up, and I was like, oh my gosh, that dream was so important, and I don't know what it means. The road down the middle and the half, okay. I was like, what does this has to do with me? I could feel it as my identity. And my initial thought is, am I going to lose my husband? I thought half of me is going to be taken. And I was like, I knew it meant something.
Wow.
And so I went to work that day. I remember just getting in the car going, I'm going to step away from this. I know I'll know when I need to know.
Okay.
And I came home that night and I said, honey, listen to this dream I had. I don't know what it's about. He looked at me, he said, that sounds like you and evangelicalism. And I just started to bawl. And I'm like, that's it. This side of the street is being wiped out. This part of my identity is being, basically feels like it's being taken from me. And I just sobbed. And I was like, there it is. That's it. That's what's going on. And I realized part of this is the beauty of the old structures was that I wasn't walking away from my faith, but that half of this heritage of mine was gone. It was leaving and gone. And it was very validating to me. I'm like, this is a profound loss to me. I am not just giving the finger to evangelicalism. I feel like I cannot stay even if I want to.
Yes.
And that's how that dream felt. And so that dream was there, and it gave me image and language to say, oh, I've still got the old buildings.
Interesting.
But I'm losing all of this side. And this side felt much bigger. It was like really vast. It just went on. Everything had been leveled.
And at that point, were it more like a looking back, that's kind of explained your last few years, or were you more looking forward and futuristic, like scared of what's to come?
All of it.
Okay.
Yes, it did. It felt like, oh, that's a great question. It was all of it. It's already started to happen. It is happening. Okay. And this actually gives me vision and language and images to help ground what will continue to happen. So, and the big question of this, I'll continue my story in another way, but this image several years later came back to me, because the question is, what's going to happen to that left-hand side of the street? What's going to happen? I will not build cheap apartments there, spiritually, kind of thing. I'm not going to just replace it with something cheap and easy. And I kept thinking, what is going to be built on that side of the road? Several years later, it was like this dawning, nothing is going to be built. Things are going to be planted. It is going to be a garden, a park that continually grows and changes and is life. It's not going to be structured with a building. It's going to be alive and growing and changing. And I'm like, yes, that's what's happening in me. So that was a beautiful image for me of where I was at and what I needed at that time. So my story goes on, and that was fall of 2009 that dream came to me. I believe it was October. Things started happening in 2010, and a bunch of things started blowing up, a couple car accidents, and then summer of 2010, just 10 years ago, I was diagnosed with thyroid cancer. And my dad had thyroid cancer, and so I wasn't really afraid of it. I thought, okay, well, I came home when they said, it looks like you could have thyroid cancer. We're going to need to do surgery. I came home, and what did I do? I got on the internet. Actually, I'm not a crazy person when it comes to health and the internet. I'm not obsessive. I obsess about many things. My health is generally not one of them. But I thought, let's look. What kinds of, let's look up thyroid cancer. So I looked, and I saw 4 kinds. And the first 2 kinds were a 95% survival rate. I'm like, good stats. Okay, good. The third one was an 80% survival rate. I'm like, ooh, that's sobering. I remember it was a Friday night. I remember so vividly laying on the couch with my laptop.
Right.
And I came to the last one, and it said anaplastic, 7% survival rate. And I can still feel the visceral reaction. It makes me tear up. I can still feel that, am I going to leave my husband and my daughter? Because nobody told me what is up with these doctors. They know we're going to go home. Give me the name. I had papillary. It was the 95% survival rate one. No one had told me that. And so the real mortality hit was that evening of, okay, this could be it. And it was really interesting because there again, this is only 8 months after the dream. And I remember that night going to bed and just finding my ground spiritually, because there again, God and I were kind of still, right. This is all deconstructed. Who are you? Where are you? Are you? Yeah, I think you are, but where are you? How do you work? How do you do me? There was just all these still open questions. And I went to bed, and I don't know, probably only old people listening to this are going to remember, but an old song came to me, and the lyrics were very simple. Safe am I in the hollow of his hand, sheltered or in his love forevermore. And it goes on. It's just a beautiful, beautiful old hymn.
Yeah.
And I remember laying in bed with tears running down my face, in my heart, just singing that. And I realized I have taken refuge in the right-hand side of the street. Those structures, those ancient structures are still there for me. And in life and death, I've still got those. I don't know what's on the other side, but in life and death, I thought, I still got those. And so it was a very profound, I didn't know I'd get this emotional. It was a very profound moment for me to ground and to know that I had ground to stand on, to know that there was a solid rock, as another old hymn refers to, and that, oh my gosh, it's still in me. I still have faith. God is still right there at the rock bottom when I could abandon my husband and daughter and my other two kids. And they were out of the home by then, so I was not as concerned about them as I was my 14-year-old, I believe, at the time. Yeah. So at that point, there was tremendous comfort because spiritually, I knew that God and I were still a thing. It's like, okay, so if the worst happens, and interestingly, my seemingly simple 95% survival rate went sideways. So this was preparation for 6 months later when this would metastasize super fast, and everybody would be wondering what was my life was definitely in jeopardy. But I knew I had that right-hand side of the street to go back to, even though I didn't understand the left-hand side still. I didn't understand what to make of it. It was kind of irrelevant for a while. And I just went back to the ancient parts of both me and the faith that I knew. And I said, I'm still in. I'm still a believer at some level. And so the years went on. I went through some really painful things with my cancer. Another painful thing is my daughter's life was in jeopardy. Her health turned very south quickly after mine did. And it was very volcanic for 2-3 years. And so on another level, I had to relinquish not my life, but also hers, to say, what if I lose my kid? And so I emerged from that. Interestingly, in 2010, cancer gave me the excuse to stop going to church. People would be like, where are you going to church? Oh, fighting this cancer thing. And I'm just, I have to keep my practice together. So weekends, I'm really laying flat, which was the absolute truth. Because I was down on the weekends for years. But it also gave me a lot of reprieve. And so when I re-entered, we entered in a very different type of a church. And my husband was going through his own process that didn't parallel mine a lot of times, spiritually. So we were working that out. And I
also feel like it shook up your friendship circles, because in the moment you didn't attend church anymore, it was more like, who are the people you still see and come over? And
it shook
you up that way too.
It shook a lot of things up deeply. And I think it's been slow and quiet. I have not been vocal publicly about, nope, I'm not evangelical anymore. If you ask me, I'm going to say it, but I'm not public about it. So a lot of times I think people still assume I'm right in the inner world of evangelicalism, and I'm not. And I'm fine with that being public. It's just that a lot of them faded away. And a couple of my closest friendships, they were going through the same thing. Yes. One of my closest friendships was not, and we've survived and thrived, but it was hard on both of us. She was terrified for me. I mean, she thought I was walking away from the faith, and I was terrified. I thought I might be. I didn't know where this journey was going to take me. So through the years, there's been a slow reconstruction. It's been very slow and very careful, and then I've deconstructed a little bit and then rebuilt a little, and I think, like all of us, it's not a single path. So that's part of my story in terms of how it intersected, internally and externally, with my world.
And thank you.
you're so welcome. It's fun to be able to tell that part of the story and those threads.
Yeah, and if I know a little bit that you have been, the last few days trying to figure out what to share and what part of your journey, and like
Yeah.
you said, and we acknowledge there's so different parts that
Yes.
are interesting of everyone's lives. But I'm so appreciative for you to share that, because I think a lot of us in the Cascade community can relate to this process. And you kind of gave us a quick overview of 10 plus years.
Yes.
But I think there is, like I would actually say, like because I'm younger and where I'm at in the process, I might, see myself in year 4 or 5. And, so it's very fascinating. And thank you so much for sharing, because also for your honesty. Like, I'm so grateful that you're so honest, because you kind of summarized the cancer part of it very quickly, but I kind of only assume that there's, it was so much more than.
Oh, that's its whole other story. Yes, absolutely. But that's how it intersected with my faith journey. And I think you're right. I think I watched some people go through deconstruction so fast. And I'm like, wow, it took me, this was such a tedious, slow process. But that's honestly, for as fast as I move in life, deep down, I'm very, okay, don't laugh, stable. I don't move fast quickly. And I just don't, big things take time. And so this was, I just gave you actually 12 full years story of how that all, slowly crumbled and then happened. And then kind of got back, about 10 to 12 years of getting back on. So it's everybody's story is different, of course. And everybody's timing is different, but hopefully that can be, I always say, where was Cascade when I needed it 12 years ago, when I really desperately needed it? So
now we're here. So
yes, we're here.
Before as I'm wrapping this up, like maybe quickly share also with us, if people want to hear more about your the story parts you mentioned around spiritual abuse and that pieces that you have shared before, where would people find that, and how could they hear more about that?
Totally. Thank you for asking that. Yeah, YouTube, put in Connie Baker spiritual abuse. My site's coming right up. My story had some people, some of my friends who are fantastic with video, made a really good video. They made me look professional. They did a great job. So there's a 14-minute video of my story there, which is its own thing. And there's, I've written a book, Traumatized by Religious Abuse, and you can find out all kinds of stuff there. So
I wanted to quickly highlight that, especially for new people, because I think it is such a special and so it's such a unique the word, part of who you are. And I think we are so blessed as a community that we were actually get to hear this part of your story already, in sermons and before. And so I wanted people to really, like, who might have be like, wait a minute, I want to hear more about that. So please go find Connie Baker on YouTube if you want to.
Yeah.
And otherwise, thank you, Connie, for sharing your story.
I'm so looking forward to hearing from more people that you and I are going to be interviewing.
Yes, we have a few lined up. They're coming out in the next few weeks. And so we're excited to share those with you. And please let us know. I mean, as the two of us are together, if you want to share parts of your story, we would love to hear from you. This is just a little fun project that we're doing for the Cascade community as we're like wrestling through this pandemic and so missing each other on Sunday mornings and really wanting to, remember each other, like that our story, your story matters. We all have stories that inspire and that can be celebrated. So who needs to hear your story today? That would what we want to leave you with. So thank you, everyone.
Bye-bye.
Bye.